This is the Needs Assessment Wrap-Up for Allison Leitner. The background of my needs assessment is that the client that I worked for has begun a new online education initiative to fit with their strategic plan. The current focus of this initiative is on MOOCs, or Massive Open Online Courses. What they asked me to do was look at student engagement, especially in terms of learning communities. The organization currently has 3 MOOCs running, and they've created learning communities for 2 of these 3 MOOCs, one of them very successfully by using psychographics. Psychographics are attitudes, values, opinions, and interests, as opposed to demographics, which are age, gender, education level, profession. So what they asked me to do in this needs assessment was to see if there was a way to replicate the success of the learning communities that were created using psychographics. Throughout the needs assessment, the process that I used, there were 3 main methods of data collection. First, I used formal interviews, I used informal interviews, and I also used extant research. I conducted formal interviews with the organization's leadership, as well as with the instructors and developers of the current MOOCs that the organization has running. Then I conducted informal interviews with MOOC developers and learning community managers of MOOCs from other organizations. Some of these were in higher ed and some of these were non-governmental organizations. And through these informal interviews, I looked at the best practices and current trends that other MOOC developers were using in their MOOCs and their learning communities for student engagement. Finally, I looked at extant data. And the extant data I looked at included the organization's strategic plan and mission statement, research on student engagement in online education in general, best practices for student engagement in MOOCs specifically, and also research on learning communities to support online education in general. There isn't very much extant data for learning communities in MOOCs because MOOCs have only been around for about 3 years, so data is really just coming in now for student engagement and for MOOCs in general, actually. Some of the lessons that I learned while going through this needs assessment, there were 3 main lessons. They were time management, data management, and attitude management. By time management, I mean that with any process, you need to do a little bit each day. You have to manage your own time, and you can't leave it all for the weekend or for the end when you end up being swamped with too much stuff to do and not enough time to do it. You also, in terms of, particularly when you're doing interviews, need to leave extra time to schedule the interviews and wait for responses. So if you need responses from somebody, you can't assume that they're going to turn around and get them back to you the following day. In terms of data management, it was really easy to get sucked into the research. I found it really interesting and I was learning a lot, and I often found myself reading research that really didn't have very much to do with the needs assessment that I was working on and the questions I was trying to answer, my key questions. So I think it's important. You need to know when you have enough research and when you're veering off topic in your research. Finally, attitude management. By this, I mean you have to remain flexible and you have to be willing to broaden your scope of research depending on the answers you get to the questions that you ask of the stakeholders. But you also should be able to narrow it too. If you're going down a rabbit hole and that's really not productive, you need to be able to pull yourself out of it. Be flexible that way. And then you also need to remain focused on your key questions to ensure that you will come up with an answer to the original question that the client asked for. In terms of the application of these lessons, I have 3 suggestions. The first is plan ahead. This just as with developing a training, create a schedule of deliverables that help you keep on track. This not only keeps the needs assessor on track, but would also hold all parties involved on track, including the people who are supposed to answer the interview questions. The second would be budget your resources. Know how much time and money you really have to spend and determine the allocation of these resources in advance when you do your schedule of deliverables. This will help you keep from getting lost in the research and data collection. And finally, stay objective. You have to be willing to listen to all opinions, but stay objective about the goal of the assessment so you don't lose sight of finding the needs for the organization and being able to offer high quality recommendations at the end.